Charlese Antoinette Jones, you designed the costumes for Judas and the Black Messiah, which tells the true story of the assassination of Black Panthers leader Fred Hampton by the FBI. How much did you know about the life and death of Fred Hampton before coming on board the film?
So before coming on board as costume designer, the only thing I knew about Fred Hampton was that he was murdered by the FBI. I didn't know how short his time was as chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party and how much he did in that short period of time. So it was really awesome to research him and his life and just see what an amazing community organizer and activist he was, and how much change he was able to affect in Chicago during that time, that really short period of time.
Now, we see his wardrobe in the film in a wide variety of situations, whether he's teaching or he's giving speeches or demonstrating. Uh, he was a public figure, of course. So, like, how much research were you able to do, and how much were you able to be informed by actual images of him and what you knew of his clothing?
So I tried my best to recreate as many looks from images of Chairman Fred as I could, because there's a lot of people, more than I think we realize, who know his story and who have been inspired by his story. So people know what he looked like and what kinds of things he wore. So, and also we really wanted to ground the story with the costumes being like as authentic as we possibly could, because there were some creative liberties taken with the story around what happened, as far as, ONeil's story was embellished, but what Chairman Fred did and the party did, was not super embellished. But we still wanted to, at the very least, like ground Chairman Fred, Daniel Kaluuya's costumes as Chairman Fred in reality, because there's a lot of imagery online. You can Google him and all these images will pop up of various things he's wearing. So I based my research also off of books and documentaries that I watched about the party during that time. There was a group of French activists and documentarians that were following him and the party. So I got some great source, video, footage that I could watch and really look at, and just really, even just his mannerisms and how he wore clothes. Like, clothes weren't important to him. They were, they were functional, they were utility, and he wasn't like, really into fashion. He was wearing things as armor, as he's going out in the streets and he's organizing. They were for comfort. They were for protection. He wore a lot of like military gear and things like that. So, I just wanted to make sure that when people see Daniel as Chairman Fred on screen, they can see him and be like, oh, I remember seeing an image of the actual Fred Hampton in a corduroy jacket like that. Or I remember seeing an actual image of, Chairman Fred in a leather jacket like that. Even down to there's this hunter's duck camo cap that he wore in this one documentary, and found that recreated that look as well. There's images of him canvassing in a camo pant and a military boot and a white t-shirt tucked in with no belt. Recreated that. We really tried to ground his character at the very least in reality.
And you have a lot of characters around him who aren't as well-known figures. Was there more leeway to sort of embellish or at least sort of extrapolate what that era was to who these characters might have been in terms of their clothing?
Yes, absolutely. So Bobby Rush, who is played by Daryl Britt Gibson. I only had a few images of Bobby Rush and Fred during that time, but based off of the images I had, I determined that he was one, and what I knew was one, he was a little bit older than Chairman Fred. So his style was leaning more towards like early 60s, like kind of a mod vibe. So every outfit I put and every change I had Daryl in felt more mod. Like he's like the only person in the movie that feels that way. And he feels a little bit older just based off of how he's dressed. He's a little bit more like conservative and put together, like buttoned up. You know, he's got like these chunky sweaters on under his leather coats, and he's always wearing dress pants, and he's always wearing a boot. You know, like his vibe is very much like a little bit more mature and put together. And so it was fun just like inferring that based off of the few images that I saw of him. I was like, oh, he's mod.
And William ONeil, who's sort of the other main character of the film, played by Lakeith Stanfield, who is the FBI informant who infiltrates the Panthers. Like he's not as well known a figure, and as you mentioned, the film kind of like embellishes his story and his life. So, how did you approach that character in terms of his look and his style, and especially in contrast to the main character? Fred Hampton.
So ONeil, who's played by Lakeith Stanfield, I got to play a lot with that character because there isn't that many images of him. You know, we have some documentary footage of him in, I believe it was like around 1984 in the Eyes of the Prize documentary. And then there's a few images of him standing next to Chairman Fred in, you know, a camo jacket as one of his security cadre. But other than that, it's completely out of my imagination and you know, out of the imagination of the director as far as like his character's journey. And so in the beginning, you know, we wanted to make sure it was clear and apparent that he was like a poor, like street kid, you know? So you see him in like raggedy sneakers and like, you know, crop high water kind of pants, and he doesn't have like the nicest clothes. But as he starts getting paid as an informant, you start seeing his wardrobe change because he's making money now, right? And you see him going through this journey of trying to figure out who he is. You know, is he trying to be like Mitchell, you know, the agent that he is working for? Or is he trying to be like Palmer, who is like one of the most militant and stylish Panthers in, you know, in the party, right? He's one of our characters played by Ashton Sanders. So he's super stylish. So you see ONeil kind of bouncing between those two, you know, those two polar opposites. Like, who am I? Am I like this like cool militant like street dude, or am I trying to be an FBI agent informant? Like, he's very confused, and so his wardrobe is a little bit all over the place, but in a really cool way. And you know, finally by the end, we kind of see him in this kind of hybrid look where, you know, he's wearing leather, but you know, he's also wearing a suit, and you know, and so it just kind of culminates into this weird hybrid look where, and you're still like, man, you don't know who you are at all.
Yeah, and on the other side of this story, as you mentioned, is the FBI, who he's torn between them and the Panthers. And you know, the FBI look is very like buttoned up suits and all that. So it seems like it would be a more straightforward costuming challenge, or was there a lot involved in how you wanted to establish those characters, especially Jesse Plemons as Agent Mitchell?
So Jesse Plemons, he is like a straight-laced dude, you know? So he's also a little bit behind the times. So his suits lean even more towards 50s, his suits and ties. You know, the width of the ties are much slimmer. So, you know, he kind of only wears like grays and navies and blues, and that's it. And pick those colors because that really signifies like colors that we associate with law enforcement. You know, he's very conservative, even in his personal life. You know, he's very much more of like a 50s dude. He hasn't really changed that much, right? He's not, you know, wearing the latest like 60s, you know, Chicago look, because there was a Chicago look and it was very flashy and the lapels were getting bigger and we're leaning more towards 70s, right? He was like, no, I'm still in this like slim lapel, slim tie, 50s all day. And then you see the contrast with some of the other agents where they have wider ties and their lapels are a little bit bigger and they're like not as buttoned up and neat. They're messy and they're drinking on the job. And you see that contrast between him and them. And that was fun because, you know, you have people like that at your job that's really like uptight and like by the book, and then you have the people that are like, oh, it's lunchtime, and pull their bottle out and start drinking. Like,
And there's intimate scenes in the film, and there are also like these larger crowd scenes. These rally scenes. One scene where the FBI is literally raiding the Black Panther compound, and there's a shootout. So there's a lot going on. How challenging are those kinds of scenes? Like where you have a lot of action going on, or you have a lot of extras that you need to dress for the scene, especially kind of in a period appropriate way.
yeah, so we had the estimated around 1,000 background, and over the course of the shoot, not all in one day necessarily, but when I started and I looked at that number, I was like, what? Because one, our budget, and two, we were shooting in Cleveland, so it wasn't like we were in LA where we could just like run to a costume house and procure all these period pieces for our background, and like so we were constantly fitting people in waves, like pre-fitting. Like it took a lot of like logistical organization and teamwork, and having a great team. My key and another costumer were constantly fitting background for like the upcoming weeks. It's like, okay, so next week we have this huge shootout. These are the street people. And also we're talking about different seasons. So on a given day, we could have background switching from like summer to winter, So we had to pre-fit everyone because it's period, you have to be dressed head to toe. So it was really, really hectic and really fun because I think the background looks amazing as well. I think we really did a good job of recreating this time in this world in Chicago in 1969. And, it looks like a photograph, and I'm just really happy with how everything turned out. But yeah, the stunt scenes were crazy because it was like, okay, we need multiples, like, you know what I mean? And we're in Cleveland again. So, it had to be really, really, really creative. And, there are some instances where we snuck in some contemporary pieces like turtlenecks that we could get multiples in. And, you just kind of do what you have to do. But I'm really pleased with how everything turned out.
Congratulations on the film, and thank you for joining us to talk about it. We will bring you back for our group chat a little later.